So good afternoon, friends, and welcome to this World Goodwill webinar for February. Our theme is spreading goodwill, shining a light on the Touchstones discussion project. And I think we really are going to have a very wonderful this last part of this session to hearing about Touchstones, particularly for those of you who don't know about it. So good to be together again. The central theme in the building of right relations is the recognition that the energy of goodwill is naturally present in all communities and nations. And seeds of this most basic human expression of love and sense of relationship can be found in every faith, culture, and ideology. It really is a part of our time. As we recognize these seeds, they can begin to be mobilized, organized, and empowered, and so they become much more of a powerful force for good working from a higher point of tension. And a key part of the goodwill meditation that we'll be working with today directs our attention to the question of how we can spread goodwill. Now, this is a meditation, so we're encouraged to think with our whole mind and heart, drawing on levels of intuition and considering how our soul might see this question of spreading goodwill differently from the more conscious, perhaps rational parts of ourselves. It invites us to explore very practical questions like, what can we do in our own small lives to help to kindle the flames of goodwill that we find around us? What can we do in our families, our workplaces, neighborhoods, schools, churches, and temples, or in the spiritual groups that we're affiliated with? How can we take some small measure of responsibility for at least fanning the flames of goodwill in some way? And what are we doing as a group in this meditation? In what way is this meditation helping to kindle the flames of goodwill in the world? These are all very practical questions that we can explore as if we're looking at our own lives and identities from the altitude of the soul, and at the same time looking at the life of the meditating group, thinking of ourselves as the soul, as the meditating group, and noticing opportunities and actions that we and the group are already taking that we mightn't see when we're only using our analytical or rational mind. Indeed, we can expect the soul to shine a light on what we can do as individuals and groups in terms of simple steps that are appropriate to our lives and our personalities, not designed so much to change the world, but more to reflect and express our intention to be useful to evolution, useful in some small way to the working out of the divine plan. As the meditation makes clear, any steps each of us takes can be looked at as contributions or donations, in Buddhist terms as dana, to a dynamic process of empowering, mobilizing, and vitalizing the energy of goodwill in the world. It's a process that's always underway. It's being carried forward with varying levels of purpose and care today by all the members of the new group of world servers around the world, in their millions. It's a group activity. We're not doing this on our own. As the energy of goodwill becomes more organized and focused in nations and amongst peoples, and as it is empowered with increasing wisdom, intelligence, and maturity, so is its influence in human affairs growing. Just imagine what it would mean for goodwill to become the primary motivating force in every field of relationships: economics, education, religion, so on, all the arts. It clearly is not at present the primary force. And yet, if we look, we can see that in spite of what's happening in the present, goodwill is steadily, quietly growing It's at an appropriate pace. The power of esoteric work lies in the understanding that our own experiments in mobilizing goodwill, no matter how small or apparently inconsequential, are part of this much greater momentum in human affairs. And this is what links us to the group of all conscious servers, and it's what aligns us with the Christ and the great ones on the inner side of life. It's through our own experiments as individuals and as a group in becoming agents for the spreading of goodwill, and through our sense of responsibility to this work, that we grow in the depth and breadth of our understanding of how to spread goodwill. This is the way we contribute to the molding of the will that lies at the heart of the new group. And as the central spiritual will in all its shades of clarity of purpose, spiritual tension, and intuitive insight, as this central spiritual will deepens in the consciousness of the new group, so do we see signs of humanity's initiation onto and into the path of discipleship. This is the initiation of humanity, the human species, our kingdom in nature. Esoteric workers understand that concentrated, soul-centered group thought is one of the most powerful tools available for spreading, mobilizing, and organizing the energy of goodwill in the world. And this meditation we'll be using today, and which many use every Wednesday, is designed entirely for this purpose. Our work in group meditation is hugely advanced by our constant efforts to notice or to simply see the presence of the energy of goodwill in the world. By observing this energy at work in its myriad shades of quality and refinement, we deepen our understanding of its power and effectiveness in transforming the way in which our modern societies operate. Refining our vision so that we can better see the impact that goodwill energy is having in the world helps to see through the glamours of materialism, cynicism, and narrow partisanship that are such strong conditioning forces in the thought environment of our nations. Now, today, to anchor this work, we're going to be exploring the Touchstones discussion project that's now active in a wide range of educational environments in 47 countries around the world. As we will hear, Touchstones offers a very practical set of techniques that really are meditative in a way, but we will hear more about this, and that truly spread and empower goodwill. The project's discussion-based training programs develop skills of listening, critical thinking, and collaborative approaches to global issues. And as our guest will discuss, these programs play a strong role in developing a sense of being part of a group with its own purposes and identity. Now, our guest today will be Kimberly Riley, who some of you will know. She's been on I think, on webinars and seminars before. Kim has been a leading volunteer in the Touchstones project for many years, concentrating more recently on using the approach in work with groups of incarcerated prisoners in Maryland in the US. A longtime co-worker of World Goodwill, Kim has a PhD in intellectual and cultural history from Johns Hopkins University and a master's in the philosophy of history from St. John's College in Annapolis. She's taught history in colleges and high schools throughout the US for 30 years. And we'll hear from Kim immediately after the meditation. So I'm going to turn my camera off and let's go into our work with the meditation. So link up in thought with all those people throughout the world working with this Goodwill meditation group. and reflect upon the fact of relationship. Each one of us is embedded in a network of relationships to our family. A community. A nation. The world of nations. The one humanity made up of all races and all nations. And now together as a group, all 150 of us, who use together the mantra of unification. The souls of all are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to serve and not exact due service. I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate, and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all people love. Reflect upon your own and humanity's relationship with all those beings who dwell in the higher realms of mind and heart. The spiritual hierarchy of saints, rishis, bodhisattvas, masters, honored by all the world's religions and spiritual groups. Imagine that you're standing together within the center of the spiritual hierarchy, all of us as one group, immersed in the consciousness of the heart of love. For some, this heart of love is known as the Christ. Other faiths have other names for the one at the center: Maitreya, the Mahdi, the Kalki Avatar. And holding that high point of contact, let your thoughts reach out to include all members of the human family in whom the energy of goodwill is active. All members of the human family in whom the energy of goodwill is active. And together we affirm, in the center of all love I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Visualize this energy of love flowing from the hierarchy through the men and women of goodwill and out into the hearts and minds of all people, infusing them with goodwill and creating loving and harmonious human relationships. And now meditate on ways of spreading goodwill, creating right-hewn relationships, and restoring peace on earth. realize that you're helping to build a channel between the spiritual hierarchy and humanity, a channel through which the energy of goodwill may flow, uniting humanity, enabling humanity to solve its problems, and healing all cleavages. Linked in thought with men and women of goodwill all over the world, we'll now say the great invocation using the adapted version, with deliberation and full commitment to its meaning, knowing that by using this we are radiating the potent energies of the invocation to the human family. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human beings, all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for that. Kim, you want to turn on your video? There you go. Beautiful. So we're very honored to have you here with us today, and to really, I think we can really get to the heart of understanding what it is that Touchstone is doing. And so you're the best person to be able to tell us about that.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here because I think for so many reasons, but in part because I think Touchstones and World Goodwill are just in such alignment in what they're trying to do, but they're coming at the problem of fostering goodwill from a kind of a completely different way. So I'm going to try to explain just the external what Touchstones is, and then maybe we can get into the kind of inner content towards the end. Um, Touchstones just basically is a nonprofit organization, and it takes its name, Touchstones, from the ancient tool, a touchstone, which was used to separate, I think, mineral content, or it was used as a sort of testing tool to see the quality of something. And so the idea of a touchstone, one of the things, so anyway, it takes its name from this, and it uses touchstones, which are text excerpts, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So the organization does two things. It teaches a method of discussion and group work and group formation, group building. It teaches it to teachers and to community organizers and leaders who then go out and do the program with all kinds of different groups of people, from kindergartners all the way through actually business professionals. It's a method, and then the curriculum too, that's been used at every possible level. It's been used, I think, with people at leadership at Harvard University. It's used in prisons. It's used in K through 12. It's used in college. So it has this very, very broad scope. So on the one hand, it's a method. And then on the other hand, it's also a curriculum. So there's something like 68 volumes that have already been created of these touchstones. And I put in the chat, just in case someone wanted to take a look and actually see more of what I'm talking about, an example of what a touchstone in this context would be. So if you look at the link that I put in the chat and scroll down to page 16, there's an example of the text that would be used in one of these discussion groups as part of this training process. And it's from William James, and it's called On a Certain Blindness in Human Beings. And you can see that it's a pretty short text. And so these volumes have been created with whole sets of texts like this. The method teaches you about listening and discussion, but then the texts are also about the topic of perception and understanding and how different people and different perspectives either collide or get formed or come together. So the text itself and the method reinforce each other. And the texts in some of these, say, if you were going to do, say, 30 touchstones discussion sections, the texts also go in a kind of linear arc so that the content builds as the group forms and grows. And so many of the issues that the group might be feeling at a certain point in its development, that might be the topic of the touchstone. So that you're, again, getting sort of content and method reinforcing each other. So that's the kind of the overall goal of what the foundation is doing. It produces these touchstones, and then it teaches a method, and it runs these programs really all over, essentially all over the world. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the scope in a second, but I do want to just describe a little bit of how it got started because I think it's something that everyone can relate to. It was begun by three tutors, which is the word they use at St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland, for professor, mostly Howard Zeideman, and also Nick Maestralis and Jeffrey Comber. And they were tutors in a discussion-based college program. And St. John's is a great books program. So they were using these texts, and the whole point of the college is to have a lot of seminar discussion, and they found that people had trouble actually discussing, that people come to the group and they've got their own ideas, or they don't want to say anything, or they're only like a few people, or there's a dynamic that would get formed. And so they went to actually a restaurant called Chicken Ruth's on the main street of Annapolis. And I say this partly because another woman who got involved in this was the waitress who overheard them talking about this. And she's actually involved in Touchstones today. And they were like, what can we do? And so out of that, this need to find a way to create a really productive, creative, group-led discussion, they created this whole method and then all of the curriculum, and then it eventually became this nonprofit that Howard Zeidema, for example, is still involved with, and his wife Steph Takis also, who runs the foundation. So it has this kind of birth in a moment of people who were really trying to work out what creative discussion and group mind work would be. And then it's gone on for 40 years. So it's 40 years old. So it now has a lot of scope. They have a lot of research done on what some of the effects of the program are. They have a lot of research done, for example, in high schools, where they can show a sort of decrease in bullying and a sort of increase in positive behavior. I mean, they've really worked to try to show that it's not just a theory or an idealistic idea, that it really does have this kind of a lot of effect on the way people communicate, on the way workplaces run. It's been done in many professional groups to try to create better group dynamics within the workplace. So it can be used kind of at any different level. The scope is really at this point, like I said, quite large. It started with this very small group, and 40 years later, it offers all of these programs, as I think Steve said, in 47 different countries. The whole curriculum has been translated into 6 different languages. And Touchstones estimates that it has had about 6 million participants globally over the course of its life. So it's really, I think also for this group, it's inspiring to have seen a very small group of people get together with an idea and then watch over 40 years what kind of impact it can have. And it's being used now, again, in Montreal, I think uses it in its curriculum. Many schools use it. It's being used at the University of Nevada right now in the teacher training, and also in just in the, I think, the first year seminar program. I do it in prison with women who are incarcerated in the Jessup Women's Prison. And I mean, there's just and there's a community group, like community people get together and do it. It's done in nursing homes. In just in veterans communities, there's a man that has been very devoted to working with veterans who've come home from wars and have used Touchstones as part of their both reintegration and just kind of emotional, almost therapy. So it's been used in that sense too. So it's had this huge impact. And I think that it's just amazing to think over 40 years what can happen when people just keep working at the topic of spreading a new way of thinking about how we interact with other people. The goal, and I'm just also, because the alignment's so amazing, Touchstones really, in its really tries not only to say it's a discussion method, but they really see themselves as hoping to change the way the whole world ideally interacts, and to bring a spirit of goodwill and cooperation and shared leadership. And one of the things they ask you in the group does a lot of evaluation. Like if you were in a Touchstones group, at the end of each discussion, the group would evaluate itself. You would evaluate you, and then you would evaluate the group together as to how they did. And then over time, of course, you're seeking to get more and more, get to better depth and get to better question asking, better listening, all of these things, seeing the group coalesce. But so one of the questions in that evaluation is, what does the group need from me now? Like that, to ask yourself that when you're in a discussion, what does this group really need from me now? Does it need my silence? Does it need me to ask someone a question? Does it need me to say something? Or try to steer in a certain direction. And just how will I even know that? So there's a lot of self-reflection that's being encouraged all the time about what my speech does in terms of creating right human relations and in creating a group where there's enough trust for people to really open themselves up and say things that get the group to see more clearly, or to come up with creative solutions, or to even just to have had a very in-depth sharing experience. And I think if you do one, or if you participate in one, you find it's really quite astonishing. And I can say this particularly having worked in the prison, because most of the women in the prison have not had a lot of experience with any kind of seminar work, or many of them have actually almost never had anyone ask them what they thought about anything and listen to it. I mean, I've had many women say that this is the first time someone actually wanted to hear what I had to say. And so just the power, I think, of that experience for people is really transformative. The whole way they always say Touchstones is transformative, and I think for different people it is on so many different ways. For some people, and I almost would say I'm like this, who want to say what they think and want to get in there with the idea, it really helps you start to listen and to realize how much you need to stop talking. And for other people who are afraid to ever share anything, they realize, I think, that holding back doesn't actually help the group, that to be able to share is to contribute and is to form that bond that can just be so powerful. For some people, I think just being again seen at all is transformative because they realize there's someone out there willing to just sit with me and listen. So that's a kind of overview of it. I think if people had questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We always say, I think at Touchstones, it's both very simple and incredibly complex. The method, just I'll say a little bit about it. You start each one with the Touchstone reading and you read it aloud so that nobody has an advantage over anyone else. That's another thing that people often come to groups, some people with lots of expert knowledge and some people with none. So they try to level the playing field. We're going to read just this text. No one's heard it. We'll hear it out loud and read it ourselves. And then you usually do some individual thinking work and then some small group work. So you interact with a smaller number of people. And then you get to the bigger group and have a larger discussion. Sometimes the topics or questions you've already addressed come up, and sometimes it's a completely new topic. And then the discussion proceeds, and then you do an evaluation at the end. And so some of the time that you're together is spent talking about how you interacted and how it could be better. And I would also draw your attention, if you scroll down in that document in there, there's a big circle. And so one of the things they use as a tool, they draw the circle and they put everyone around the circle who's in the group, and somebody watches the discussion and draws lines back and forth between who's talking and who's not talking or whatever. And then often they'll ask in the beginning, particularly of a group, well, do you think this was a balanced discussion? And inevitably, most of the people, actually, the people who don't talk and the people who talk almost always say, oh, yeah, I think everyone talked. I think it was very balanced. And then you hold this up and you're like, actually, this is what happened. And it's sort of that alone is usually an amazing moment of understanding that what you see, what you think you're seeing, and what's actually happening can be quite different. And that you might have to pay a much closer attention to the group to understand what was really going on. So that's like an example of what this evaluative process would be. So, right, that's the most basic Touchstones overview. And I
Kim, I
can't
think,
see
look,
anybody, but if someone wants to say something or have a question, I'd love to hear.
I think that's a fabulous. That's about as good an overview as you could get. It's changed my understanding entirely. I have a couple of questions, but then what we'll do is fairly soon we'll go over to where you can raise your hands. And in fact, if anyone wants to do that
Oh,
now, go ahead and put any questions you have or comments for Kim or for those of us who are listening, because we're a group listening, throw them into the chat box, and Michael's going to keep an eye on it. And later on, he can feedback some of the ideas to hear Kim's responses. Kim, a couple of questions. First of all, I mean, I love this. I like the practical thing. So you said the idea is you start with the reading, which is like from our perspective, it's the seed thought, and
mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm.
the thing around which the group relates. then you do individual thinking. What does that mean? Does that mean like everything is quiet and do people write to people?
Yeah, sometimes they do. Sometimes for many of them, part of the curriculum would be there might be a couple of questions about the reading or the
Mhm.
topic related to the reading. Let's say the one I put in the the chat involves this experience of it's William James, the sort of 19th century psychologist who went out into the um someplace in Massachusetts, and he's looking at a place where people had sort of cut down a lot of trees and sort of, and he's like, this is so ugly. And he makes that comment. And then the other man turns to him and explains what the people who are doing it see, which is, of course, something very beautiful. We're making our homes, or we love our gardens and our animals. And he's like, oh, he's so surprised. And then he ends it, I think, by saying, wow, if they came to my office in Harvard University and looked at it, what would they see? Maybe to them, just a pile of books. But to me, it's beautiful. So that's the theme. So one of the questions might be, have you ever had an experience like that, or where your perception suddenly changed?
Well,
So think about that. And then maybe you would share that with a couple of people. Or just any kind of question that might have to do with how we evaluate things, or what criteria we might use. What do we look at? Is it beautiful, or what is it that we're looking for when we make a quick evaluation? So it lets you pause, I think, is part of what's built into that individual work before everybody's voice starts, you know, or a few people, usually what it is a few people's voices start, you know,
jumping in.
ball rolling in a sense, and rolling almost out of control. It sort of forces control on everybody.
Right.
And
The,
then the group work, I think, is similar. It allows you to hear a few opinions that might be pretty different from your own. And think about that again before you get to the bigger group.
you're a historian, so listening to you, a thought occurs like this is a really new phenomena in human history. This focus on group dynamics. As you say, there are all sorts of discussion groups. I mean, to me, this
Yes,
is particularly sort of like I don't know how to put it, but it has a depth to it that is spiritually alive, clearly.
yes.
Um, but this is something very new in our experience as a human species, this focus on valuing the person, like really seeing the sort of sacredness, the essence of what human rights is. Um, and then this awareness of a group identity. How did the group do? So that
Mhm.
gradually you go back again and again, and you're starting to think in terms of taking responsibility for the group. That's incredible.
It is incredible. And the reason I know how incredible it is because I also know how hard it is and how everybody who participates in it, one of the things that definitely happens is that all of the training that you don't even know you've had about how you should act in a group, and particularly how you should act in something that might look like education, since so many people have been through an educational process, we're so used to well, I can think of one. I was in one seminar several years ago with a lot of actually professors from the Naval Academy, and they were lovely, lovely people. But and there was anyway a number of people with a lot of education in this group of people, and you could just see as they asked formulated discussion question that everyone wanted to make the smartest sounding discussion question, that they wanted it clever, and you realize, wait, well, I've been trained to do that. I've been trained to be the teacher. One of the rules of Touchstones, no one raises their hands. That's hard for a lot of people because we're used to that. We're not used to waiting to see where I could get in, where it would be appropriate. We're used to like, yeah, I want it. And I think that when you go through it, you recognize how rare this is to do. And I think Touchstone's whole point is none of us have any training in it. If we could get trained, if it were part of every curriculum, our whole inner being would be different. And instead of sort of fighting to be the top one, or maybe going, oh, I don't do that. I just sit here. I sit in the corner and let those other people do that thing. Wow, it would be so different, but we don't have, I think, a language or even the thought, like you said, the thought processes aren't really there. It's not how we listen. We're all good at listening to stories, probably. Like we have lots of ways we're trained to hear, but not the one that really like lets up everybody really listens to everybody and encourages everybody. Anyway,
It's
I would,
beautiful. So let's look
yeah.
to raise your hand. You now I think some Zooms are different, but for me, I click on React, and then I have an option to click on Recognize Hand Gestures, and then
I
I can
see.
raise my hand. David, sir, if you want to unmute yourself.
Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to read a passage from Alice Bailey's book, Trees on Cosmic Fire. It goes like this. It says, if a man succeeds in understanding the significance of speech, if he learns how to speak, when to speak, what is gained by speech, and what happens when he speaks, he is well on the way to achieving his goal. The person who regulates his speech rightly is the person who's going to make the most progress. I just thought I'd share that with you.
That is amazing. I would love to, I don't know how I can get the reference to that, but
It's
that's
on the
really,
CD-ROM of Alice Bailey's work. You just type in the word speak and it'll list all the references to the word.
okay. Yeah. That's great. Thank you for that. Cause that's really, really lovely. I mean, I think it's so true. The awareness. I even think what your speech does energetically, which is something I went much of my life without ever considering at all. And then when you do this program, I think you become aware it's not just the words, but the way your voice modulates and the tone behind it, and just so many dimensions of what speaking is. And again, we all assume we know how to do this. And I think one of the things that is hardest to sell about it actually is that really in their heads, people are like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. But I mean, after all, why would we waste our time? I mean, we all know how to talk. That's true. We do. We do. But it's to really speak with intention. It just takes so much training. So anyway, thank you for that.
Sam, do you want to
Mute.
Yeah, hi. Hey.
Wonderful. It's such a joy to hear all this. And it's something that I've worked on for a long time with a lot of people because we've used, when there's a difficult conversation to be had, we've used talking sticks, where if you have the stick, even if you need time to think while you're speaking, you can do that as well until you pass the stick on to the next person. And it actually really focuses your mind on what you really do want to say, and it stops the rush of speaking. We used it for when Henge had been discovered, and there was all different groups involved, the protesters, the people who were looking after the birds, English heritage, other people from the government and so on. When we actually held a meeting using the talking stick, it was incredible because it calms everybody down,
Mm-hmm. No, I think this is so true. Probably anything that stops that emotion, the immediate response and just slows it down. I feel like I have a friend who actually wrote an article about this with social media, that if you just slow its transmission down, even that alone helps stop this trolling crazy, the sort of crazy things that people say, that we need something like physical, almost like a stick. It's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, the other aspect of that is as well that if you've just spoken, then you ask the other person or other people what they understand by what you said.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, it's exactly that same kind of becoming conscious of what's actually happening. When you think of how many meetings you've been to, where everybody just gets up and leaves, no one has any idea what happened, or what really went on there. It's yes, that's
it's
interesting.
brilliant. But thank you so much for bringing this to us.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Steve, can you mute me?
If you yeah, you mute yourself, thanks. Tiffany, hi. If you want to unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Yes. Hi. So I can relate to this. Currently, I am a PhD student at the University of Delaware studying the Biden School, actually studying public policy and public administration. And the majority of our classmates are international. And our interaction and our engagement is based, a lot solely around discussions that are being had in the academic setting, where it's less, quizzes and tests, and it's more based around discussion. And I know for first and second year, especially first and second year students, we're absorbing all this information, and then we're set to come into class and have these discussions. And a lot of these students have reached high marks. I have a friend, she's from South Korea, and her life is based around high marks and they've reached the top of their classes to get into these programs. And when you get to discussion, you freeze and you feel as if you don't know anything. Or it's almost like if you weren't learning anything. It's like, well, what was I reading? I could swear I've read all the articles. I've read everything that I needed to. But then when the talking stick, so to speak, is to you, you have a large portion of people who they clam up, or we have someone who takes the topic completely off of what we're discussing.
Yep.
And now they're talking about their personal issues or conflicts that are going on in their country, and you kind of want to be sensitive to that, but you also want to bring it back to the center. So the discussion piece is especially when it's to rank, because these people are like, I need a grade. Am I getting a grade? What's my grade? And I'm not talking. And a lot of my grade is based around these discussions that we're having. And I'm reading the articles, but it doesn't look like I'm reading the articles because I'm not speaking, or I feel like I don't know what to say, or how to say it, or am I talking too much, or is she talking too much? And so there's a lot of things going on, I think, in your mind when discussions are going on, that the freezing is almost par for the course, because so many things are going through your mind. I think during discussion, for some reason, it's there's so many more emotional things that are actually going on as well.
I think you just beautifully described exactly, in part, the way we're all trained to talk. I mean, the way, or people who've been through an educational system particularly, are really trained, and then the confusion that happens, partly because no particular goal's been set for the discussion. Often it's just like something's going to happen, but we don't even know what it is. And then because the group doesn't self-evaluate at the end, you don't even know
Right.
what you were trying to do. Or, you could say our goal is to understand X better, or, what is it? And so defining that right in the beginning would be interesting if it's possible. But I think it is one of the problems with the free form discussion.
Right.
Yes, you can definitely get something out of really anything, right? But it could be so much better with more intention and more, and again, where people are taught to kind of calm themselves and think about what we're trying to do. I mean, I've been in that, exactly what you described, so many times. I mean, both as a teacher, I think I led that discussion too, even worse. And I've certainly been a participant in many, many, many of those. And I think also this, what you're describing in our educational system tells us to do this is it's like an aggressive, it's a free for all to try to win something,
Yeah.
but we don't even know what we're winning. I mean, and then of course, if the goal is really to learn, you can just learn. So I have never been in a discussion that didn't involve learning something from someone else. I mean, where someone else thought of something completely differently from what I did. So
Agreed.
again, the need for some training, I think would benefit everybody everywhere.
Yeah, and my last thought is that so we're preparing for discussion. I don't know that you can prepare for discussion only in the fact of gathering knowledge, but that doesn't help you in the discussion itself. The knowledge you have, right? You can prepare for the actual information. Maybe it's the critical thinking piece. I'm not sure, or the ability to synthesize this information that you're learning. And so maybe the professor feels as though they want something in particular, or maybe the lead wants something in particular. And sometimes I think if they have an agenda and we're not quite following that agenda, it almost looks like we're failing at it, or we feel as though we're failing at it because there's nothing that we're adequately doing. We're just talking. Are we just talking about this thing? But I feel like, is that a part of our grade? So there's this really confusing piece in discussions, and there's a piece that you cannot prepare for. You cannot practically go get a book and say, here's what we're going to do in discussions. Module A, you do this and that. So again, that training, I think, is necessary for the leader as well as is the recipient or the students or those who are engaging.
Yeah, it helps to have a good central question too. I think to start with like something that's guiding, that's where you've got like a lodestar or something that you're aiming for. No, I know. But I mean, again, I think what you're describing is exactly the experience that most people had. And I'm sure if someone wanted to describe a meeting at work like this, they could, same thing, where it's just sort of unclear what the agendas, the layered agendas underneath the external speech even are. And again, I think that's one of the things, having both led them and participated in them, that you do see, if you do it with a group of people and you do it over a long period of time with the same group, you do start to see this in yourself. Like, I understand that my agenda, my sort of unconscious desire is whatever it is. I mean, it's different for everybody.
Thank you.
Anyway. And of course, we've all been trained in our families. This is a whole nother subject, but boy, how your speech style got built into you as a child, I think, is another thing that people never think about, what they're bringing from that or from the family that they came from. What do they bring into a discussion with other people from that, very unconsciously?
That also relates incredibly to like Goodwill, to how our speech and how we have so much to learn about how we interact. Look, we're coming close to the time. I think, Wendy, it'd be lovely to hear from you. And then are you okay, Kim, if we go a little bit over time?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, and then some will have to go, and some good, faithful ones hopefully will stay with us. And then, so after Wendy, then Michael, if you want to give us a couple of things from the chat, because I can see there's a lot on the chat there, and then we'll finish. But Wendy, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes.
Thank
Hello.
you.
And thank you for the wonderful presentation. I'm absolutely buzzing. So more or less what I've been thinking has been said, but I'll put my hand up, so I'll say it anyway, which is along the lines of, excuse me, the absolute fear and dread that people have of public speaking. It's in the workplace. It's in, as the previous speaker said, university, education, etc. And we don't have a context or a system whereby we learn to go from fear and pride into courage, so that we're able to say what it is we want to say. And I think part of that process of conditioning in our childhood has been so that I know I have to work hard to overcome the fact that I want to say something, but I have to get my idea clear first. And in that, I see a parallel with the Arcane School and the Lucis Trust, because I see a training wherein a person can learn to find a clear idea and find, if they go deep in themselves enough, to say what it is they maybe have wanted to say for a long time or not even known. So in that way, it brings about a connection with the soul, so that we're not just chitty chatty people speaking meaningless garb or speaking for the sake of it, but there's a rhythm and a pace to to communication, because every human being needs to communicate, whether they've got a voice or they're deaf, they may be deaf, blind, or whatever, but there's signals in the environment and coming from us all the time. Anyway.
No, I think what you're saying also about pacing is so important, because one of the things I think that comes out when you do these Touchstones groups for a period of time is how the processing speed that people have, it really differs from brain to brain. And again, we're never really told this or trained to be patient with someone who needs much more time, either to even think of an idea or to express it. And then some people are like bing, 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 super fast. And it's hard often for them to slow down. I would put myself in that corner, and you begin to learn this and learn to sort of attune yourself, I think, to other people. And I think we also aren't trained to do, when you're talking about courage, to show respect and to find a way to show enough warmth and respect to make it comfortable for people to speak. And of course, a lot of what then you have to filter out, like, what is your real goal or your unconscious goal of not every person comes to in a discussion. Some people come, when I was in graduate school, I've been in discussions where I would say the intention of at least half the room was to terrify and destroy all the other people in the room. I mean,
yeah.
Right, they don't come with a sign, but that was the real goal. So, okay, I think that's limits us. It limits us. And
can
so,
I just,
sorry. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to share something that
Yeah.
I remember when I first, this is going over 20 years ago, when I first joined the school, World Goodwill and Lucis Trust. And I was one of those people that felt, I feel that I was very criticizing, and I had to put that degree of criticism out there in order to have that mirror, which a group setting can serve as, to see myself doing that. I went away feeling so bad, and all my pride about, I've got something to say, freedom of speech, etc., was dissipated. And so, yes, I think making it safe for people obviously is so important.
Yeah, no, exactly. And thinking about that, thinking about how to encourage one of the other techniques is the clarifying question, which is how to ask someone a question that helps them say more about what it is they're trying to say, or helps, I don't know if it's even consciously moving it somewhere, but just how to help other people talk. I think that might be what it is meant to do, is to try to really, are you doing something in a group that's helping other people speak as fully as they could?
And maybe too, it's interesting because when someone comes from a deeper perspective, from any deeper perspective, almost a natural thing will be how can I evoke the depth that I see there that's
Mhm.
waiting to be expressed, and then just by learning by practice, how the hell you do such a thing. Listening to you talking, it does relate very much to any system of training and meditation that uses a Raja Yoga type approach to a thought, to an idea, in a group setting. That's not at all, that's for all people. And the more the participants in the group come from some background where they're doing their own work and building their alignment, then the more a group can help that person move to a service mode away from a personal growth mode. Instead of how can I contribute to the group itself rather than how can I teach the group?
Yeah, no, exactly. No, exactly.
Mike, sorry,
No, go ahead,
I'm
go.
just looking at time.
Yeah, yeah.
Michael, is there anything in the chat? I'm sure there's a lot that you think would be good to draw
Yes,
attention to.
Steve and Kim, thank you
Thanks.
both so much. There are a few questions. One of them, which may be a short answer, is, are there any touchstone groups in Italy? Which sort of begs the bigger question is, how could someone find a
Oh, yeah.
touchstone group in their
I was,
area if they were interested?
yeah, I was thinking about that. I think I wonder if the best thing would be for them to either email you and then you could tell me, and then I can ask Steph A if there is one in Italy, or there are online ones also that happen that that the person could join. So, figuring out how to best serve the person, maybe is that a system that makes sense if they like tell you who they are, and then you can tell me, or I could put
Yes.
my email. I'm happy to give people my email too.
Well, it's live streamed on the internet
Okay,
also.
so
So maybe it's safer. I'll just put our World Goodwill address here,
okay.
and then I'll just forward it to you.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great, because
Yeah,
I was
okay.
thinking that it might be interesting, or if people were even interested in experiencing one, we could just do one. I mean, I would do one, but like we could
Oh,
do it on Zoom. We do them on Zoom. They're better in person, but I actually I think we're going to have to learn to live with Zoom, so we can make them
yeah.
good.
We can talk more about that. That's
Yeah, that'd be
lovely. But
fun.
yes,
It'd be
so if
fun.
anybody would like to get in touch with Kim directly, you just email worldgoodwill.us, elusivestrust.org. It's in the chat.
That'd be great.
Do we have time for one more, or should we conclude,
Yeah,
Steve?
one more, Michael, I reckon, and then we'll call it
Okay,
a
there
day.
was a few I was going to say, but actually one just came in that I thought was really nice. Um, from Clementina in Uruguay. She asks, she'd like more information about how you use this with kids.
Oh, they're much smaller readings. So the one you saw obviously was something, well, so anyway, it would be shorter. And sometimes they use visual images. They have a lot of great ones on artwork, or comparing art, or looking just at one piece of something. And so it's the same thing. It's sort of like, what do you see? The questions become about perception, but it doesn't require a lot of reading knowledge or a lot of reading skill. So that is one way, is to do it with visual images. And then they also have often really short readings that kids can understand. You'd be amazed. They actually, there's these volumes. So in all the volumes that have been created, there's a whole series for kids called Touch Pebbles, actually. So they're like they're little pebbles. So it's the same exact thing, only made it for younger kids. And I've seen it done with some younger kids, and it's you'd be amazed. My experience is that you'd be amazed what people have to say, no matter whether they're 7 or 97, or you know some fancy person, or someone who's incarcerated. I mean, there's you give them the chance.
That's people. That's the beauty of the human being.
Yes.
That's all of our work centered in
Yes.
that creativity of a kingdom in nature that is in process of undergoing an initiation. I mean, in a way, that's what all of what we've been talking, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, look, Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. I think it's so helpful for the group to anchor itself in these examples where humanity today is creating the techniques and the technology that is actually mobilizing goodwill. So thank you so much for that, Kim.
Well, thank you for having me.
Let's just close with a moment of just silence together. Thank you. Thank you all. There's a slide going to come up with the showing future programs that are on, and I just want to remind you about the fact that the Triangles Meditation Group webinar and the next month's Goodwill Meditation Group webinar for everywhere outside of the Americas will be 1 hour ahead of where you're used to, because the daylight saving, there's an hour difference between when most of Europe and most of the world, in fact, moves to daylight saving and when it's done in the Americas and including in the USA and from New York, where these are broadcast, where the time is set. So next month, if you're outside of the Americas, just check the time, but it'll probably be an hour earlier than what you're used to. And the Newman Meditation meeting is the next broadcast, I think, from Lucis Trust and World Goodwill, coming up on the February the 26th. In fact, tomorrow.
Is it the 26th?
That's the wrong. Yes, it's Thursday the 27th. It should be, I suspect. Today's the 26th, so tomorrow, and there will be broadcasts from London at 6:30 p.m. GMT and from New York at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then the Arcane School Conference, just a reminder that comes up, starts that 3 Spiritual Festival. The series starts in May with the May Conference and the Taurus Festival in New York on May the 10th to 11th. So thank you, friends. Thanks, Kim.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Good
Bye.
show.
All right. Wait, how do I get out? Oh, yeah. Here we go.